Fresh and
All right, welcome back to another episode of Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh, and you are all my buds. I hope everybody's doing well out there. Today, we have a wonderful guest that I've been meaning to get on the show for a long time. You know him as Mr. MajiinBae. I like to call him Mr. Bae because he is just such a handsome, handsome devil. As you can see on the YouTube right now, if you're watching, if you're listening, you're missing out. How you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have some stuff that I want to get to before we start talking to Majin over here. First, I want to shout out to the Patreon, which helps keep the lights on, the mics hot, which, you know, is much appreciated. You can pop over there. You get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord channel in the Buds Discord. You get a Romping Club membership card. You get access to bonus episodes, and then also some pack openings from the Bud Rush Bello, which is another show that I do on Wednesday evenings with our friend Gary, aka Mr. Viz, where we kind of do a live podcast. It's a lot of fun, 9:30 Eastern on Wednesdays on the YouTube, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're watching on the YouTube now, check it out sometime. And also, if you're not, check out the YouTube, give us a little like, comment, subscribe. It helps. And at 500 subscribers, we will, well, not we, I will be doing a full adult Levia cosplay. So I don't know how I'm doing it yet, but we're going to figure it out when we get to 500 subscribers, which we're eking there, finally pushing the YouTube a little bit more. And Gary will be the dead rabbit that she kills, and that's going to be a lot of fun. But now that we've gotten through that, let's get to you, Mr. MajiinBae. How are you, my friend? How is it going this week?
Going good. It's going good. Had some computer issues, so finally back online. That's nice.
Yeah, I saw that you tweeted about your motherboard kind of went down. How long? I mean, it seems like you turned it around pretty quick. I mean, I've luckily not had to deal with that yet, but you know, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's not fun. It's just stress. It's just stress. I'm sure you get it, right? Like, this is my whole life. I have to be doing stuff. I have to put out content. I have to be on. I have to be, yeah. And it's just like, oh no, it's down for like a few days. So the first thing I did is like call my brother, who's the computer person out of the two of us. And I'm like, Pete, I need you to get over here. So he like comes over. We spend like 2 full days like diagnosing it, trying to get a motherboard, and then putting in a new one. Luckily, it worked. So shout out to my brother for that one, keeping me alive.
Shout out to MajiinBae's brother, who we're gonna call MajiinBro. And
bro.
Yep, and you know, hey, listen, we all need folks like that in our lives that can come in and save the day. Now, if you don't know, and I'm sure most of my listeners do know, you are a Goliath Gauntlet winner, Indie Calling top 8 competitor, which was incredible. That happened recently, among many other things. But before we kind of get to that kind of stuff, I want to kind of get down to who is this man behind that wonderful smile that you have. And we're gonna get into it. So you play a ton of card games. I think.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I really like card games.
yeah, and you're certainly very good at it. You play them very well. I want to know, when did these card games in general kind of come into your life?
So real quick, if you don't know who I am, I'm a Legend of Runeterra streamer. That is what I do as my job. I play Flesh and Blood a lot because I really like it. We'll probably get into that later. Just some context. So card games are basically my life, right? Graduated in 2013 from high school, and I'd never played card games before, except for like Yu-Gi-Oh on the playground in elementary school. But that wasn't so much playing card games as it was whoever had the highest attack power on their monster just won.
Yep.
So I remember I would like do a bunch of chores and save up money, and then I went on eBay, typed Yu-Gi-Oh card, right, and I just like scrolled down until I found the highest attack power I could find, which was like 3,600 or something like that. It was some like centaur dude that had a specific like cost to summon him, but we ignored that because we're 8, you know. So yeah. I bought it with like my $16 of money that I'd saved. Showed up and I was unstoppable. That was my like card game experience basically until post graduating high school. My friend Brady came over and he brought Magic the Gathering decks, which I've heard of, but I didn't know anything about. I just knew it was a nerd thing, right? And so we're playing. And I'm doing kind of okay. I'm kind of getting it, but not really. And then I was like, oh, this seems kind of cool. You know, it's a game, whatever.
Mhm.
And then he did something where he like cast a removal spell on his own guy to get a beneficial trade out of it. It was something like, I needed this guy to be there so I could get this effect, and I was gonna win. And he like killed his own guy, and that like blew my mind. I was like, oh my god, like what a 5-head! I didn't know you could do that. Like I didn't even consider that, and I just thought that was so cool. So like I was hooked like immediately. So that night I like Googled Magic the Gathering tournaments, and then I read every article I could get my hands on, and the next day I showed up for a draft. Like I was just about it immediately. That's kind of how I got my start in card games, I would say.
That's kind of interesting, you know, the idea of sacking a creature to do something was so, you know, revolutionary to you. I mean, and if you told 8-year-old MajiinBae on the playground playing with like the largest attack power Yu-Gi-Oh, it's like, what if you killed that thing? You would have been like, what?
Why would I do that? Yeah, that's so dumb.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, it's incredible that you also jumped into a draft the next day, which is pretty great. Do you remember how that draft went?
I 3-0'd.
Jeez, oh my god.
I have no idea how. All luck, zero skill involved. I called out my second round opponent for cheating.
Wow.
Not like straight up. I wasn't like, you're cheating. But I remember I had drafted like, first of all, I drafted 4 of these cards that untapped 2 of your units because I thought I got to attack again. Like, oh, I tap my units and attack, and then if I untap them, I can attack with them again. That's not the case.
Yeah.
I found that out in round 1, and then in round 2, my opponent like attacked with this dude and then cast a dude, and I was like, wait, you can't cast things after your combat phase because your main phase is done. And he's like, no, there's a second main phase. And I basically said, bullshit. Ended up getting really lucky winning the draft, but it was a really fun experience.
Well, it's kind of funny that, you know, you 3-0 your first drafts and kind of sets you on your way to kind of a lot of success in the game. Now, you know, before we get to that, I do want to say, you know, ask you, like, what do you look for in a card game? Because you do play so many of different ones.
Yeah. I mean, it does sound like I play a ton, but in reality, the games I've really sunk my teeth into is like Magic the Gathering, Legend of Runeterra, and Flesh and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it's basically only been those is because the first thing I look to is like an organized play system. Like I love playing in strategy, or just I love playing in big tournaments with thousands of people with lots of stakes more than I love doing pretty much anything else on the planet. Like that's what gets me. Like someone recently asked me what my like ideal day is, and I was like, I wake up at the hotel with the boys, right?
Yeah.
We like hit the gym, we get our last sideboard card ready, and then we jump into the tournaments. Like that's what I want to do. I love to do that. So that's the first thing I look towards. The second thing is I need interactivity. I need to be able to feel like what I do matters. And what tends to happen is games that have a lot of back and forth. Flesh and Blood has a lot of back and forth, right? I attack, you block, attack reaction, defense reaction, instant. Do you want to activate any equipment? Hero power. There's a lot of like moving parts in Flesh and Blood. And that gives me the feeling that my choices really, really matter. And that's super important to me. That's like probably the second thing. There's also stuff, you know, like cool art. Do I like the IP? Can I play it in paper or online? That kind of stuff. But honestly, like the other biggest thing is like, do I like it? You know, some games you play and you're just like, this is a good, like objectively a good game. I'm just not enjoying it.
Do you have a good example of that?
For card games, generally no, because I can see it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll never enjoy playing Pokemon.
Yeah.
It's just not for me, right? It's not for me. But like I see a game of Flesh and Blood and I was like, I like that. Or sometimes I'll play a game and the way I like to play games just isn't present in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no combo archetype. Everything is creature or unit based. There you don't draw a lot of cards. Like I like to do all of those things. And so if it's not present, I just won't play the game. I'll just like, or I'll move away until that does exist. So like for Flesh and Blood, when I saw it, first thing I did, as probably everybody did, look up the classes and heroes. See like, what do I want to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw Kano, and I was like, yes. I was like, that is my boy. And everyone told me they're like, don't play Kano. This was before like PT1, right? So everyone was like, Kano's a meme. Nobody wins with Kano. It's a terrible deck. It kind of is. Or it kind of was. This was like before Wildfire.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Definitely before Wildfire.
Yeah, I picked it up anyway, and I was like, oh my god, I would kill a man for like a wizard that could still combo but could play a normal game as well. And then Icelander came out, and I like lost my mind. Like this is it. So like my Flesh, I played Flesh and Blood quite a bit, but I wasn't like super into it. Like PT1, PT2, Nationals, I put like a couple days of testing in. PT1 I tested a little bit more, but like for PT2, I showed up in France, 0 games played. Like I played the pre-release event for Uprising draft. That was it. So I just like didn't enjoy it. I was like, whatever. But yeah, then Icelander came out, and I was like, yes, and I'd like doubled down on it because finally the way I like to play the game, the way I like to play games, was there. It existed.
Yeah, that's and now that presents an interesting question there because you know Icelander's been presented to you and it's exactly what you like, but we have a living legend system. And Icelander is no doubt very good. You know, maybe not as good as it was maybe a couple months ago or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. It's always going to be a potent deck, and it will eventually living legend. You know, do you hope that there is some kind of replacement for you, or is that something that you're worried about, or you're just like, you know what, if it's gone, it's gone. We'll see what else is coming down the pipes.
Yeah, there's been other things that like fill that niche for me. I like to take a lot of game actions, and I like to be able to do things in response to things, and I like to make tricky plays, right? So like something that really satisfied that for me was Chain. Like Chain was like everything I loved, except he literally didn't say wizard, and that was it. Like everything else was great though. Love playing Chain. I found that in Skeleta Viserai, right? Because you could enact different game plans, and I thought that was really cool. Spellbound Creepers opens up a lot of really interesting options to you. Rattlebones mixed with Skeleta can have some like really crazy combo plays, and I thought that was like really cool. So I'll find something, but sometimes like during PT2, I hated the meta. I didn't care about any of these decks. I didn't want to play a single one of them. So I just was not playing Flesh and Blood. I just showed up, like I said, with no practice, not ready to win a tournament or whatever, and then yeah, went home and that was that. But then something else came along that I did like, and I moved my attention back to Flesh and Blood. And that's kind of how I do things. It, you know what, ebbs and flows a little bit. Maybe I'm super into Legend of Runeterra because I love this champion, I love this deck, and we have this big tournament. But now maybe next 2 months we don't have any tournaments, and my favorite deck got nerfed. So let me go over here and maybe play some of this, like make up for it.
Well, it's nice to have that option, right? You know, to kind of be able to kind of shift back and forth and you know keep your mind active in these games and you know, hey, eventually find success, which you have, which is incredible. Now, I want to know about your successes that you've had in non Flesh and Blood games, and you've mentioned Legends of Runeterra, and this is primarily what you play the most of. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I was really into the competitive scene at first. I still am. I still really enjoy it, but it's a 3-deck format. You bring 3 decks, and then you each pick and ban one, right? And then you have to win with the other 2 decks, which it sprinkles some like interesting strategy stuff in there that I hadn't encountered yet in card games because I've always played Flesh and Blood or Magic, which is just 1 deck, right? So I thought that was really interesting, and I tried really, really hard at the competitive scene. I ended up becoming a seasonal champion, which was the highest thing you could win at that time. I qualified for Worlds 2 years in a row. My competitive success has been mostly just consistency. I'm one of the like highest percentage top cutting players in the entire game, like in the world. I have fallen off a bit. I wouldn't call myself washed yet, but I have fallen off because my goals have changed for Legends of Runeterra. I have moved from being a competitor who streams to a streamer who competes. That makes sense. Like a content creator who competes. My priorities have shifted. I'm getting the competitive outlet that I need. I'm scratching that itch with Flesh and Blood mostly, because I think it's I think Flesh and Blood is the best competitive game, like competitive 1v1 game in the world, like across all genres. I think it's so good. Legends of Runeterra, while a fantastic game, I would argue offers more than Flesh and Blood overall to like a variety of people. Is not quite as good in that aspect. So I tend to focus more of my competitive focus on Flesh and Blood now, and then more everything else. I get my jollies, right, playing Legend of Runeterra. I play the fun stuff and things like that. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Now, in terms of Legends of Runeterra, I had downloaded the game. I played a little bit, here and there. I never really got into it. I don't know why. I played a lot of card games as well, but for whatever reason, that one didn't really vibe with me. Maybe I didn't have a kind of pitch. Like, what would you say is the elevator pitch for Legends of Runeterra?
The elevator pitch for Runeterra is, I mean, obviously, like League IP is big for a lot of people. A lot of people like League IP. You don't need it, but it's nice. I enjoy the League IP. It has the single best like client in card games. When you're actually playing the game, it's so smooth, both on mobile and PC. All the characters have really unique, interesting voice lines that they talk to each other. It builds up a lot of lore. The art is beautiful for the card game. The actual game plays so smoothly, right? Like the game feels good to play. Some games don't feel very good. Magic feels clunky a lot of times. Hearthstone feels very much my turn, your turn. Legend of Runeterra feels very smooth. And what I love the most about it is there is a lot of interactivity, right? If you put something on the stack, your opponent can put something on the stack. You get all of your resources back every single turn, including draw a card. Like if it's your turn, I also draw a card and get all my resources. The only thing that's different is you get to attack on this turn and you act first. So it's very much like more like kind of give and takey and less like, all right, bang, your turn, bang, all right, bang, and that's how some of the games can feel. And yeah, it just feels really good to play. I did also bounce off it actually early. The beta came out, I tried the game, I played it for a few days, and I was like, this ain't it, I'm bored. I got back into the game later when they announced competitive play, and the game had changed quite a bit, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I actually got to Masters like really fast, right? I play card games. It's not that hard if you have the experience to lean on. So I got to Masters really quick and then got stuck. And I was like, bro, I'm playing the best deck. Like, I'm playing the best decks. What am I doing wrong? Like, I must just be getting unlucky every single time. Eventually, I got over that hurdle, learning that unlike Magic, generally the smartest play in Magic is to just play the highest cost thing that you can play every single turn. It's correct like 80 to 90% of the time. Less so in more eternal formats, but that's a whole different piece. And so Legends of Runeterra, I was doing that same thing. I was trying to be just as mana efficient as possible. But because of how interactive Legends of Runeterra is, and because of the spell mana system, are you familiar with the spell mana system?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. In the little I played, I did get it, yeah.
If you don't spend some mana, you can bank some for future turns that can only be cast in spells, and that increases the interactivity and lowers how important curving out is, right?
Sure.
And so here I was just trying to curve out, and my opponents, understanding that, because we're in Masters or whatever, was able to take advantage of me. And finally, there was like a specific moment. I was watching the end of the seasonals tournament that I did not win. I top cut, but I didn't win it. And I was watching other people play, and it was someone's attack turn, and they had like 7 mana, and they had a unit on board that could attack through their opponent's stuff. And they go, okay, draw, my stuff gets untapped. It's my turn. I'm going to pass this. I'm going to pass priority. And I was like, that must be a misclick. You have 7 mana. You can attack. Like, you can do all these things. And they passed. And I like thought about that really hard for a really long time. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, wait, that's so smart. Because you're in an advantageous position. And if the game goes longer, your deck gets better. But by holding the attack token hostage, you make it really awkward for their opponent. Because if they play things, now you can this unit could attack that unit and like make this really awkward. So as long as they don't go into their turn with like 3 things, you're going to be fine. And that was such a like revolutionary moment for me. Be like, oh, I really like this. And that's kind of how I got like super, super into Runeterra.
Well, that's kind of interesting, that you brought up that you watched, right, these high level players. And, that kind of proves the point that watching high level play is so important, right? And that can relate to Flesh and Blood right now because we are very blessed to get coverage in one way or another, and even things beyond that, like the Goliath Gauntlet over at 983, that we get to watch these high level players play the game the best way it can be played. Now, have you also consumed people playing in Flesh and Blood to help further your understanding of this game?
Yeah. I do quite a bit. I saw success in Flesh and Blood very early. I watched like a little bit of play, and it was quickly really apparent to me that this game is a math game, right? Like above all else, this game is a math game, which I think Hamilton took to like an extreme level, and that's why he's so good. But I realized that like, okay, if I get more numbers out of my hands than my opponents get numbers out of their hands, I'm gonna win the game. And so like that's all I focused on was like, I'm gonna just get the most points. And so I was doing like pretty good at that. And then I saw, other people play the game, people like Hamilton, people like, Tarek, Matthew Folks. Like I saw them play the game, and they focused on that kind of stuff. They either took it to a new extreme, or they didn't follow those rules in favor of doing something else that fit their macro plan better. And that was like, that's a big level up for me. I find that my biggest level ups are never like mechanically. I'm like a really strong mechanical player. And what I like to do is find the macro elements of the game. If you don't know what I mean by that, listener at home, I mean that if you're playing against Fatigue Oldhim, what's important is not getting the most points out of your each individual hand. What is important is that you present enough points on enough turns that you can overwhelm how many points they can defend for. So usually I can't remember what Tarek called it, but it was like a really, really good term. But it was basically like you stockpile damage to unleash it on one turn, right? And that's your macros. I need to get 40 points of damage across through all of my threat density. So you have to be aware of like different things, right? And so your macro plan changes. And so if I have a good macro plan for a matchup, I'm able to line up the mechanical play, the micro, as I like to call it, very easily. I'm able to like go, this doesn't fit my game plan. I need to do this instead, even if it looks worse. But sometimes I can have a hard time coming up with that macro in the first place. Maybe my idea is not quite right. So I like to watch content on the best players and see what their game plan is in matchups. Right? Like I remember watching people play Icelander to Dromai, and I was like, this matchup's kind of miserable. And then I watched someone just like ignore everything, ignore card advantage, ignore like everything, ignore threat density, whatever, go face, like just beat ass. And then they ended up losing the game. But I saw the plan, and I was like, oh, let's try that. So I abandoned all defense. I just went face, pitching my disruption, my blizzards, my CLFs for later, right? That way, I go damage, even so much that like I'm not blocking with my poppers because I'm sending them at you, kind of stuff. And then in the late game, then you need your disruption and your big damage spells, arcane damage spells to go tall, and that like completely changed my win percentage in the matchup. Like I started crushing that matchup. What people would say is like unwinnable, it's so bad. And so that's the kind of stuff that I watch Flesh and Blood content for. Seeing how these people make their like overall strategy can completely change how I approach a given matchup.
It's kind of funny that you say that because you're almost describing your level up here in the same way that you leveled up in Legends of Runeterra.
It's the same. It's
right?
Always the same. Yeah, always the same.
Which is kind of cool that it kind of is consistent across the board. Now, you mentioned that you do content, right? You make content for Legends of Runeterra. You stream. What kind of content? How would you pitch your content to the listeners?
So usually my YouTube content is I would call it like entertaining educational content. Because of how YouTube works. And I have to pay bills and stuff. Most of my content is I try to bring viewers a different deck every day. A lot of times I'll repeat, like for 2 weeks I haven't played this deck. Let's bring it back, see how it changed. And then I'll talk about the deck a little bit, and then we'll play some games. And what you get is my running commentary, my thoughts on playing the game. You're gonna get a bunch of jokes and stuff in there as well. but you'll pick up some stuff. You should mulligan these cards in this matchup. This is what your overall plan should be. My opponent's doing this, and I think that's not the correct plan in this matchup. They should be looking to do this instead, right? Like that kind of stuff. And so, I would like to think that it's funny, it's fun, and people they pick up things along the way. My stream tends to be, it sounds a bit more like, I'm just having a conversation with chat. So sometimes they ask me a question, I'll answer back. And then there's also my tournament content when I'm playing a tournament. That's the competitive stuff. If you want to learn the game, just watch me play tournament.
Yeah, and now you do Legends of Runeterra as content. Have you given any thought into producing any fab content?
Yeah, I really want to. The problem is, it's hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard. Right? I mean, you know this. Making content for a paper card game is difficult, and a big thing that's difficult is the deck building in Flesh and Blood is, compared to other games. I hope the listeners don't take this wrong way. It's very boring. It's very boring. Like, an Icelander deck is basically an Icelander deck. And to me, that's one of the most interesting decks that can be. There's either attack actions in it or there isn't. Maybe you play some really weird build, but it's probably not very good. But for Legends of Runeterra or Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or whatever, I can have YouTube content for 3 months and never repeat the same deck, right? They can do these wacky, wild things, and maybe they're really competitive, or maybe they're not, but they're really funny. Flesh Blood doesn't have that, so that formula doesn't really work. And then everything is like, when you're making content and stuff, it takes a lot of time. I mean, I know you know this. It takes a lot of time. And so if I'm going to take time to make Flesh and Blood content, it has to be worth it for me. That makes me sound a bit like a douche, but like, I have to pay my bills with content, right? And so if I'm making Flesh and Blood content, there's an opportunity cost. I'm not making content that's going to get 5 times as many clicks with a fifth of the time required. Yeah. So yeah, do I want to make Flesh and Blood content? Absolutely. I still plan on making. I always tell myself, yeah, of course I'm gonna make Flesh and Blood content, and then it's just like, it's just not quite happening yet. So we'll see.
Well, I know you mentioned that the deck building is pretty much on rails. I think it's the best way to put it, right? We're getting closer to breaking that. I believe truly with things like Dynasty. Now, it wasn't a lot of high-powered stuff, but it definitely gave us some things that you can play around with different heroes and stuff like that. So as we get more of that, I hope we get to the point where a content creator could kind of do the wacky, crazy stuff that's also still good, and or at least trying to explore that. So I hope that we get there, and I hope that you do start making some Flesh and Blood content, because you're a great content creator. I think we'd be better off, with you in our sphere. And not that Legends of Runeterra.
What is this League of Legends crap?
Yeah, what is that? Now, so I have a question here. It's like, what attracted you to Flesh and Blood? I think you answered a lot of that already. Is there anything maybe on the IP side? Because it is a totally new IP. Unlike, Magic's been around forever, and Legends of Runeterra obviously came from League of Legends. Was there anything in the IP of Flesh and Blood that drew you to the game?
Yeah, so it's not the IP in the way that most people mean it when they say IP, but there's something about Flesh and Blood. I was playing it with, again, Brady, my friend who showed me Magic the Gathering, and something he said really stuck with me because I 100% agreed. I just didn't really think about it yet. He was playing a Ranger, and I was playing something else, and he was like, man, when I play a Ranger, I feel like I'm an archer. He's like, I have to, it's a little bit more difficult for me to go through to like attack things. I have to put them, I have to like load and do these things. And I have to like be really smart about my offense. And I can't get hit too hard because my defense isn't very good. And it feels like I have to like outsmart my opponent and stuff like that. And I was like, damn, it does feel like that. Because when you're playing Bravo, it feels like you're some big ass dude and you punch someone in the face. And then when you're playing, like, when I play Wizard, I feel like a wizard, right? I'm just trying to like stave them off, boom, like drop my magic and right away into the sunset, right? Like that hero identity doesn't really exist in other card games. I haven't felt that way ever. And so Flesh and Blood, like, I think they need to lean into that. I don't know how, but like, I think that's such a huge thing, less so for competitive, but more for people of a casual audience, which I think Flesh and Blood is so far not doing a great job of attracting. I think that's probably the game's biggest weakness. But like, people love that. People love to identify with something in a game, right? Like I am a Dorinthia player, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That feels great, and I think that was the most attractive part of the IP, as you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it makes total sense. I mean, the listeners know that I play a lot of Brute. That's just what like I feels like I'm just like a big dumb idiot smashing away at things, and that's fun to me. But and I do agree with you that the casual side of things does need some work. I'm hoping the PvE kind of brings that along, and we don't know when that's coming and what it's going to be like, but I really do hope that. And and then also we just need more cards. I think that's it. Just
absolutely.
More cards to build with. So hopefully we get there. Now, how do you manage your time in between the games currently? Because specifically your prep for the Calling Indianapolis, because that was the most recent large tournament you played in that and you did very well at.
Yep. This might surprise people, especially people that only know me from Flesh and Blood. I don't play Flesh and Blood unless I'm preparing for a tournament. I simply don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I have to budget my time very well, or very like carefully, especially with card games. And so like the majority of my time goes to Legend of Runeterra. It's my job. It's the same as like anyone else doing a job, right? You have to spend most of your time doing that. And then what I do is I make a big push on Runeterra, right? I find out what I really like in the meta, what I think is really good. I make my content or whatever. And then, Calling's coming up in 3 weeks. Time to get going. Then I can pivot a lot of my attention over to Flesh and Blood. Most of my time is still spent in Runeterra, but my like competitive attention, right, is on Flesh and Blood. So I go to a couple locals if I can, like once a week. I talk to my friends on Discord. I get games in. I start jamming games on Talishar, like that kind of stuff. Still, like I said, most time is on Runeterra, but I don't know the word to call it, but like my mental, like, not equity, but like that is in Flesh and Blood at that point. So,
Gotcha.
But I'm relying on the fact that I've already done my homework for Runeterra. I already know what's good. I can accurately like deal with things in the meta, right? I don't have to put that much thought, like real thought into it. So I can use that elsewhere in Flesh and Blood. And that's kind of like the shift for me. It's more mental than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you have a test coming up, right? And you have like a ongoing kind of thing going on with Runeterra, so you're all studied up for that, but you really have to focus on the test, which is the Flesh and Blood tournament. And yeah, it makes total sense. Now, as someone who's heavily involved in something that as successful as Legend of Runeterra, how do you view the health of Flesh and Blood right now?
So I would say, if I'm going to be completely honest, I think it's an incredibly healthy competitive game.
Sure.
I think it fails at everything else. I do. I think it can still do it for sure. But, if you look at like Magic, the majority of the things that are propping up Magic is casual players. It's honestly mostly like Commander and kitchen table players, right? And Flesh and Blood doesn't really have that. Like, I could play a fun game of Magic with some wacky deck I made against someone who's not very good, and that'll still be fun for both of them. But, like, I can't do that in Flesh and Blood. I guess maybe I can, but it's not going to be any fun for me. I'm going to kick this guy's teeth in, and none of us are going to have a good time, right? Like, yeah. And there's not the, like, wacky, crazy stuff. Like you said, I think it's getting there. I do. I think we're getting closer and closer and closer with every set, but it's not there yet. Mm-hmm. So what you're just playing is not a fun meme deck. You're playing a bad competitive deck because there is no other, like, really option. This is all opinion. This is all just what I feel, right? And so what I really want to see is I want to see Flesh and Blood really push to get that, like, casual audience. I think, like, the dual deck they did with Dorinthia and Rhinar is such a fantastic idea, except it was $50.
Yeah.
And no new player is going to walk up to some card store and say, "Oh, Flesh and Blood, I've heard of that. Let's try it out. Hey, dude, you want to pitch in $50 to try this game?" Like, no. I think the Blitz decks are great. I think they're awesome. What I would really like to see is I would like them to see the dual decks, right? Boom. Which is basically two Blitz, like a Blitz deck and a half put together, and then maybe put instructions on what cards to take out to make it Blitz. Like, if you wanted to play that. Something like that. I want to see Ultimate Pit Fight either get revamped or get more attention. because I still don't know how to play the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
And I'm not sold on PvE, but I think I'm incredibly biased because I'm not interested in PvE things generally.
Okay.
So,
And that's a totally fair statement. But, talking to people, I think PvE might be the solution. I think Flesh and Blood's the only game that it could work, right? Because of the hero identity thing that we had talked about, right?
Yeah.
It does feel almost like you're playing D&D, but with a card game. And
I get you.
And I think that could be the way. I think, and I talked about it on the other show that in Magic they always had the 2HG on Sundays, right? Two-headed giant. That was a ton of fun. I think there could also be a really cool way to play that in Flesh and Blood. I don't know if anybody's figured that out, but it sounds really fun. But always on the pre-release weekends they've had 2HG. Now if they had a PvE like Sunday on pre-release weekend for LGSs to kind of give out cool promos, get people out playing the game with these new heroes against something, it could work. But you're right, UPF needs a little bit more focus. We have some great content creators out there like already doing a lot of UPF stuff.
Yeah, I know like DM Armada is really into it, and
DM
on Road and all that.
Yeah. As from Go Again Gaming, I was just on, or we just recorded one, and it was a lot of fun, and it's very cool. I am someone who hated EDH in Commander. I never really liked it when I was a Magic player, but UPF is actually fun for me. Maybe I'm in the majority or minority there, but we will see what they do with the casual stuff. You're right. It needs some revamping or some focus because the competitive, as you said, is like
it's there, man.
It's there, top tier. We're seeing just like the best players like ever. And it's like so much fun, and it's interesting because we don't have a lot of cards. We need more cards. And we're living in, like for Flesh and Blood, it's 1995 Magic, but the internet exists. So people figure things out, right?
Yeah.
You don't show it to a locals and people are just trying things and they don't know what's going on. People have it figured out. So that's something that's just unfortunate. But let's get a little casual. MajiinBae, what do you think? I want to ask you your fresh faves right now. And the fresh faves are going to be your favorite of each category that I ask, and you hopefully answer them. We're going to start off with, who is your favorite hero?
Okay, it's actually Kano.
Okay, all right.
I know I had that whole spiel about Icelander, and I enjoy, I get more enjoyment out of playing Icelander totally, but every now and then when I bust out the Kano, that's just a blast. It's so fun.
It's fair. I mean, like when you're winning with Kano, it's like the most fun. Well, when you're losing against it, it's the least fun. But
the problem with Kano is that if people decide to beat you, you are going to lose. Yeah. Like if people show up to beat Kano, you are not winning. And they're like 3 Oasis for Spite. They have the other one that flips the top card.
Oh,
and like 3 AB and Spell Void 2. You're like, all right, bet.
yeah. It is the shame about the deck, but hey,
so fun.
It's fun. What is your favorite weapon?
My favorite weapon is probably that's tough. It's gonna be between Kraken's Aethervein and Duskblade.
Duskblade. Whoa.
You played with that card? It's not okay.
I played with it in draft and it was not good, but I've never tested it in real games. When have you played with Duskblade?
It was legal in Blitz, I think, first.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Holy smokes!
I played it in Chain and Blitz, and it was not fair.
That card is insane. Oh my god. Oh, Tales of Aria, man.
Yeah, what a set. Yeah, I would have to say honestly, Kraken's Aethervein. Like, I think it's such an interesting card. I wish it was a little bit better. I have mine like cold foil signed that I was so excited to play, and then Moon's insane, so I don't get to play it. But
yeah.
I think it's just a cool card because it like forces people to choose. It's you have to be really smart about using Kraken's Aethervein. Like you could sneak it in when you think that your opponent has to use every single resource, and now it's like, okay, do they give up 4 damage to swing Rosetta Thorn, or do they give you a card and take 1 damage? Right? It's like I think it just gets some really interesting spots with it.
Yeah, no, it's super interactive and makes you got to make your opponent be smarter than you, which is always fun. Doesn't always pan out for me, but what can you do? What is your favorite equipment?
My favorite equipment is Spellbound Creep. Well, I mean Storm Striders, but outside of Storm Striders is Spellbound Creepers. Storm Striders makes Wizard. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, Creepers is unreal good.
Creepers is the most interesting piece of equipment.
Yeah.
You have to be really like heads up to play correctly with Creepers. The only part that really sucks about Creepers is that when you go activate Creepers and someone goes, "What does that do?" Then you have to go, "Okay, so this is going to sound like I'm cheating. This is going to sound like I'm making this up, but I swear to you that's how this works. I actually get 2 action points."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's so good, and I've lost to it quite a bit, so I understand why you would like it. What is your favorite run-of-the-mill cards that you put into your deck, your attack actions, non-attack actions instance?
I was super into Belittle. I thought Belittle was super nuts. Thanks, Matt Folks, for putting me into that. After that got banned, man, I would say, trying to think of like a card that I always want to put in decks. Honestly, just Enlightened Strike. I'm don't. There's a theme with my favorite cards. My favorite cards are cards that give you lots of options. You could do lots of things. And Enlightened Strike is one of those. I just think it's like just a fantastically designed card.
It really is. It's never felt too powerful, but also extremely powerful. Which
at the same time, it's great. Yeah.
Which is such a a great thing to have. I mean, we have a lot of things that are too powerful and feel it as well. We need to work on. But hey, those were the fresh faves. Now, before we get to some listener questions that we have, because you are, it seems to me as an outsider, to your life, right? I view you as someone who's got this great just knack for card games, right? You've had success in other card games. You have success in this one that I love so much. I thought it would be cool to ask you about some common, like what you thought were some common threads in trading card games or collectible card games, however you want to call them, that can improve a player's, kind of wherewithal and play. So
yeah,
I want to ask you if you were to sum up TCGs in general as a skill,
sure,
how would you define it?
I had to sum up TCGs as a skill. I mean, obviously there's a bunch of different ones that go into it. There's the memorization aspect where you have to know cards, but I feel like that's pretty low bar. I think the most important skill. Can I do that?
Important.
Okay.
Yeah.
The most important skill to me in TCGs, or honestly any kind of strategy game, this could be like fighting games, real-time strategy games, card games, anything like that, is the ability to formulate, like to make and to execute a macro game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep throwing that around, but basically what I'm saying is like have a plan, like an overall plan. And I do coaching for Runeterra a lot, and the biggest thing that I see, the biggest like step between like a Masters player and like a tournament winner is generally the tournament winner always has a plan. Like, right, I have an overall plan for this matchup, and it starts from mulligan. And that's like where the other player is like, they make really good decisions every single turn. But if you're both making really good decisions, but I know how I need this game, like I have an overall way that I win the game, and I have an overall game, like an idea of how I lose the game. All of my decisions guide us away from the game state where I lose and towards the game state where I win, right? No matter how that may be. So if I have any advice for the listeners, I don't know if that's where the question's going, but that's where I'm taking it.
Sure.
Is you should, if you're struggling in any matchup or anything, you should have a plan. Like when you see your matchup, your opponent flips Dorinthia or they flip Bravo, you should go, okay, like I need to do this, this, and this. We're looking for this. We need to keep our opponent off this because this is how I lose the game. And I don't care if you don't know what you're supposed to do, make something up and stick to it. And then if you find out that that doesn't work, then you change it. And you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that and iterating and iterating and iterating. And that's how these people end up on finding things like Full Fatigue Oldhim with Warhorn and Remembrance, right? Or like how to play against that, right? Like that's how these really good players get to that point. And You mentioned it when I kept talking about it, but my biggest level ups are always, always, always understanding a plan that I didn't before.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy once you have that in your mind, like concrete. Um, like I know that this needs to happen and I need to keep my opponent from doing this. It's really easy to make all your micro plays towards that goal. But it's really tough to make the best, most educated plays if you don't really know exactly what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think that, you know, something that I have fallen into and will fall into is I'm presented with, I just let myself get presented with problems for me to solve, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's a valid way to play the game, right? Like, you know, hey, listen, you know, you choose whether to block or not, and figure out what you're going to do on your next turn. But, you know, like you said, kind of doing that is great, but like also you want to do what you need to do to create those steps to the end of the game, because you have to create the path to the end of the game, because it's going to come whether you like it or not, and you want it to be your path and not your opponent's path.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's great advice for anyone who is playing, you know, Flesh and Blood or any other game. And you know, that's great. Now, what are some?
Real quick, I have a great example of that
Sure.
I just thought of. If you don't mind. Recently in Auckland, Matt Rogers played Hayden Dale. It was Icelander versus Oldhim. Matt Rogers on Fatigue Oldhim. True Remembrance, one Warhorn. Now it's open decklist, so they know what's going on. Hayden also has a Remembrance, and his overall plan was to get Matt to commit and sacrifice Warhorn the 3 times he's able to use it. Wait until that happens all 3 times, cast Remembrance on the 3 Frost Hexes while getting out energy pots and sacrificing them to save the Insidious Chills. Then later, stacking up, like restacking all 3 Frost Hexes, and then start triggering the Insidious Chills and comboing. And we saw him do a lot of things that worked towards that game plan. He kept extra cards in hand instead of like pitching them to stuff because it worked better. He cast Aether Ice Vein without fusing because he knew that it wasn't the time to start going yet. It didn't fit the game plan. He cast Frost Hex into a face-up Warhorn when he didn't previously have one because he needed Matt to commit the last Warhorn activation so he could remember it's all 3 back. Like that was it. He ended up not winning the game. There was problems with like the game and stuff. But that's such an incredible example to me of someone who knows their game plan and tailors their plays accordingly. Because like if you just present someone that game state, you have a Frost Hex in Arsenal, they have a Warhorn, and you have like your Insidious Chills or something, and they don't have a Frost Hex. Like you don't have another Frost Hex. There's no way that you would cast the Frost Hex on them because they're just gonna blow it up, right?
Yeah.
But that was the best play in that scenario because of the overall game plan. And I saw him cast that, and I was like, wow, like he really knows what he's doing. And I think that's such a great example.
Yeah, it's excellent. You know, and unfortunate, you know, that there was things going on with that match, but we don't have to talk about that. But you know, hey, I mean, it's up on the internet if anybody wants to go watch and kind of witness that, which is really neat. Now, are there any things that can be taken away from other games that can be applied to Flesh and Blood, like other games you play, and vice versa? You know, bringing some stuff from Flesh and Blood to other things that you play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest one is like resource management is probably the biggest like general skill in card games. I know I said that it's having a plan, but like resource management is probably the biggest level up from like starting to getting competent at card games, and that goes across all of them. It's a little bit more like there's different resources to manage in card games. Like in certain card games, you have to eke out every last bit of value out of your cards. In other card games, it's more important that you eke out every last value out of your like resources, your mana or your whatever, right? And then Flesh and Blood, there's other resource management, right? Maybe you need to pitch stack your reds. Maybe you need to make sure you're getting the most value out of your carrion husk, right? Or something like that. And that carries over. You just have to like kind of adjust like the order of importance of things in your mind. So I think like that's really important. And then honestly, I would say that I'm not like a natural insane card game player. I'm a really good card gamer, right? I'm a really good card game player. I've played basically at the pro tour level of every single card game I've ever tried. But I would say my skills aren't specifically like card game related. I'm not just like a savant at card games or whatever. What I am good at is I understand the best way for me to learn new things.
Mhm.
Right? I spent a lot of time on just, and that applies to like everything, teaching myself new skills. I understand how I learn best. I understand what I need to put in to get stuff out. And that's the skill that transfers from card game to card game the best for me. I don't know if that made any.
No. I mean, hey, listen, it's your truth, and that's all that matters. I mean, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of disservice. I think you are an excellent card game player, but no, I understand where you're coming from, and it does make sense. Like the resource management is, I mean, it's just different lenses, right? That you have to just kind of put onto the camera that you're like pointing at the game that you're playing, and it's important to know that. Now, before we get these listeners' questions, is there a common mistake you see made across all games by players?
A common mistake, yeah. I mean, a million. But
what's the biggest? I should say
the biggest one is misevaluating what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, you see people block vanilla damage with their equipment. They're misevaluating the value, right, of that. They don't know that like it's more important to save it for Command and Conquer or something like that, right? That on hit damage is worth way more than vanilla damage. They don't know that in this matchup, this card's normally very good, but it's not here, so you can block with it. They don't understand that Force of Nature is usually just a block 4 in Barrage, and that's insane enough. So I would say just people like not quite understanding what's important at different times and not changing in their mind depending on the situation.
It's totally fair. Totally fair, buddy. Now let's get some listener questions if you're ready for them.
I'm ready.
We got some fun people asking questions, which anybody can submit in the Buds Discord, which is in the links below. I encourage, it is a wonderful safe space for all kinds of flesh and blood people. Please join it. And we have one question from, well, actually, there's two questions from Flake. The first one,
oh my god, of course.
The first one is that he posted was, what cards are booty cheeks and who has the biggest dumper?
All right. So I would say the card that's most booty cheeks right now, the most like copium card out there, is Exposed to Elements.
Okay, all right.
That card's terrible.
Wow. Okay.
I have a pet theory. Yeah, I played it. I've registered it in multiple tournaments. My theory, and I this is me projecting because this is how I feel. My theory is that people play Exposed to the Elements because they want to feel smart and advantaged in mirrors usually, or in a certain matchup. Because that's why I played it. I wanted to feel like I had one over on my opponent. I didn't because it's not a good card, but like that's why I played it. So I think that card's booty cheek. Yeah.
It's fair enough. Fair enough. And who has the biggest dumper?
Who's got the biggest dumper? In like a good way, I would have to say. Oh man, I don't even know. Probably like Wounded Bull.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Big old
dumper. Yeah.
Big old dumper.
And then his serious question, although those questions were also quite serious.
Oh, very serious.
Do you feel content creators deserve more respect or acknowledgement for being elite card players?
I think they do. I'm in a very privileged position where that the general like what do you call it? Not prejudice. When you assume something about someone, what is that called? You assume something about a group of people.
Oh god, I just want to say
absolutely blank.
Predisposition or
let's go with that.
Yeah,
let's go with that. Right? I'm fortunate enough that the predisposition to assume content creators are not very good players or not top players. I dodged that because I made my content career off being good at Legends. Right, so like even when I'm not the best, people assume I'm pretty good, and I am pretty good. So I am lucky enough, but I do think that more content creators deserve more respect. I mean, DM Armada went to the finals of the Goliath Gauntlet to only be beaten by another content creator, right? Like, I think people just assume that they do funny things on YouTube, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Hey, listen, you're talking, Majin, you're talking to the future Worlds winner.
Yeah,
no.
I heard.
Yeah, you got the early press. It was all rigged, it's all in the script. But yeah, no, I agree. Hey, listen, we could play too. We could play.
I think a lot of times content creators just have different priorities.
That's it. That's it. I mean, hey, listen, I could spend, all my time editing and doing this podcast in practicing, or I could do the podcast and edit it.
Yep.
We have to choose one. Next is a question from Coppola, who asks, how hard is it to transition from a fully digital card game to a physical one, and then back and forth, obviously, as you do?
Not very hard. The hardest part is not actually the transition of the game. It's not like playing the game. The hardest part is you have to change your habits. Like for Flesh and Blood, if I want to practice, I have to go somewhere, or I have to jump through all these hurdles to play online. I either play randoms on Talishar, or I have to get a friend involved and then do that. And it's such a pain in the ass. If I want to practice Legends of Runeterra, I literally just go open Legends of Runeterra, ranked, start, right, and that's it. If I want to practice specific things, I can scrim against people, but it's a lot easier to coordinate because it's in client. So I think that's the hardest part. And also, if you're used to an online game and you come back to paper cards, you will drop your cards a lot. You're gonna drop, and people are gonna laugh. People are gonna laugh. But there's an actual mental drain that happens if you're not used to handling physical cards. You spend too much mental energy thinking about not dropping your cards. Where can I put my graveyard? It's a real thing. I swear. It's so stupid.
I mean, hey, I think that was my biggest realization when I used to play a lot of Arena, and I came back to play, and I was like, oh, I forget how to touch these things.
You're messing up. You're missing triggers.
Yeah. Next comes from Gary, Mr. Viz, who's my co-host on the Bud Rush Bellow, who asks, who is the Legends of Runeterra equivalent of Viserai, and why should he play them?
Okay. Viserai is a more aggressively slanted kind of mid-range deck, I would say, that things like Mauvrin Skies and split damage makes it difficult to block. That's what it looks like in my head. There's a bit of a combo element. So I would say that you're looking for probably some sort of Auction deck. Either Auction Sivir with a Demacia splash, or Auction Varus for a more combo splash. So Auction Sivir would be post-ban of Skeleta, and Auction Varus would be pre-ban of Skeleta. They have things like Quick Attack, and you have a plethora of spells that make blocking for your opponent very, very awkward. And then usually they chip in, make things awkward, make things uncomfortable, and then they have one turn where they say, checkmate. They present this attack, and because of their things or whatever, it's too hard for the opponent to officially block all of them, and you're able to kill them over the.
It's a great answer. It's a great answer. I don't know if it's right, but it sounds good.
I don't either. I said it very confidently, so I'm hoping that people just agree.
Yeah.
They're like, that sounds right. Yeah, sure.
And the final question comes from Greg Big Dick Jones, who asks the same question every week. Which hero are you taking in a fist fight?
Okay, so I feel like the standard or the correct answer would probably be Rhinar. But I think Bravo fucks people. Oh. I think that dude fights people for fun.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he's asking who would you take?
Oh, who could I fight?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, certainly I would go with Rhinar or Bravo too.
I'll fight Chain's decrepit ass, dude. I'll beat him up. Especially young Chain. I'll fight him right now. I ain't scared.
Yeah. It's no emos around here, kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, well, listen, this was a ton of fun, Majin. You're great. You're an awesome bud, and thanks for coming on. Can you please plug all of your things for the folks?
Yeah. So if you want to find me on most things, it's just MajiinBae. Majin spelled with 2 I's though, because people like to take the good usernames. And then on Twitch, it's MajiinBae LOR, and that's basically how you find me. Cool.
Well, I hope everyone checks you out. And you can continue to find me at FreshBudsPod on Twitter. Check out the YouTube. Give us the old subscribe, like, comment. The Patreon. Check out the Buds Discord. It's a lot of fun. Great people in there, and we really do have a great community. And Majin, I always like to end the show talking a little bit about food. What is some?
I love food.
What's some food that you're really enjoying right now? What's something that you're craving
right now? Okay, right now, big fan of Mongolian barbecue all the time, right? But lately, something a little minor. So the actual food, Mongolian barbecue. Small thing that I've been really enjoying is kimchi.
Kimchi. It adds so much to so many things, doesn't it?
It's just nice, a little bit on the side.
Yeah.
Put it up, yeah.
It's a great answer. I really appreciate that answer. Now, this has been fun. I hope everybody has a great week.